and welcome to the podcast, Benny Wright. Ben, not many people do know about you because I've interviewed a fair few big names, so to speak.
Yeah.
But I brought you in because you've just had an interesting life.
Yeah, and I don't think I've followed the traditional racing path either. Like I've noticed, like a lot of the guys that you've had on the show who I've followed and raced against some of them and known as well. They've all come from generally like a karting background.
Yeah. Yep.
I didn't.
Yeah.
Man, we didn't have the money.
Yeah.
Like Dad was in the army for first for the half of my life, really. Yeah. Like my go-kart, my first go-kart had pedals.
Yeah.
It was a go-kart frame and it had all the stuff but it had pedals. Yeah. So for me to go fast, like once I maxed out pedal speed, it's like, right, how do you go fast? Oh, gravity. Yeah. Right? Like find the hill, go to the top of it. How fast can you go?
Can you touch on your dad a bit more? Like
yeah. So dad, he's not in the army anymore. He got out quite a few years ago now, but he was a colonel in the Australian Army. He cleared landmines over in Afghanistan for the UN.
Wow.
Yeah. Like he was away. I made a joke at his 50th that I actually had only known him by that stage in my life 11 years because he was away that much.
Yeah.
So
did you bring yourself up at home?
Yeah, well, mum. Yeah, mum sort of raised me and my sister most of the time. Yeah. Most of the time. It was always funny when Dad came back home because we all had our own routines. Yeah. Right? So we were like, he'd come home and like, no, we won't be doing that. And it's like, hell, mate, for the last 6 months, that's how it's done. So, so he was called Sir at work, but at home, he was like, he was just my dad. Yeah. Like there was not going to be any saluting. It's like, you're not here. Yeah. We're doing our own thing. Yeah. So, yeah, but like he was cool. He was, I didn't get any sort of racing prowess from my dad or his side of the family. They were into trains. Yeah, okay. Right? Like full-size trains. Like my granddad, his father was a train driver. Yep. And then, once he retired, he had literally like a room almost like this that was an entire train set. Yeah, it was nuts. Right. Wow. But it was so slow. Yeah. Like I remember he'd go, hey BJ, Benjamin James is my name. BJ, come into this room, show you something. 3 hours. He was having more fun than I did. And he's trained so slow. This is so slow, So grew up, son of an army kid, son of an army dad, pardon me. Lived in America, lived in England. So I lived in England from 4 to 6 and America from 11 to 13. Yeah.
So it was England first, then America.
England first.
Was that because your dad was docked in those two countries? Is that
how it worked? So he went over to staff college over in England. So we lived in a place called Wiltshire. And I didn't realise that years later that would actually sort of come back with my racing, which we'll probably touch on a little bit later. Yeah. But we lived in Wiltshire for 2.5 years, came back to Australia, and then moved to America, and then lived in Missouri. Yeah, mate, that was an interesting place. Yeah, like dead smack in the middle of America, but very Southern style values. Yeah, interesting place. But originally, I didn't think I was actually going to race cars. We actually thought I was going to go into like dirt bikes or like MotoGP. Yeah, right. Mate, I'm not the tallest bloke. Yeah. Like I'm like 5'5", 5'6". Yeah. 5'6" in heels. Yeah. And and people are like really good on a bike. You got the right size and you've got big balls. Yeah. Like I said to you before, like we didn't have money for go-karts, not even dirt bikes, like when I was little. So I was out on my pushy every afternoon after school. And
was this in the UK at the time?
Yeah. By this little BMX with yellow spokes that I jumped too hard one day and I shattered the spokes. Yeah. And hurt myself pretty bad. Like,
Were you watching Mick Doohan and stuff on TV like GP back then? Or
mate, Wayne Gardner, Mick Doohan. Yeah. Like I actually caught the tail end of Wayne Gardner's career as a little kid. And then as Mick was first coming in. Yeah. And to be honest, it was actually Mick who really inspired me because I was born with a condition called Arthrogryposis Multiplex congenital.
Yeah.
Congenital just mean at birth. Arthrogryposis multiplex meaning it affects the joints, muscles, ligaments in multiple areas of your body. Some it affects like just lower body, some upper body, some it's spread. I've got a little bit of a mix of everything in terms of like, to me, I haven't known any different, right? So when Mick Doohan came along and he had this big accident, I can still remember, he shattered his right leg and ankle. And they were like, oh, what a shame. This is probably going to be the end of his career.
Yeah.
And he was super young. Mate, they saved his leg and all that, but they wired up his ankle.
Yeah.
Like I've got a wired up like right ankle.
Yeah.
With like this stainless steel KY. So I can only like bend my right ankle about that much.
Yeah.
And I was like, I want to race cars or do that. Like, can't move my foot enough.
Yeah.
So I got really disheartened because when you're a little kid, you don't know about fabrication and engineering. And then next minute, Mick Doohan's back out on a bike, winning, 5 world championships. And I find out that basically, they'd moved the foot brake that he used to operate with his right foot, same as me, up to the handlebars and gave him a lever like you would with a clutch and a front brake.
Like modified it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm like, kid, I can still do this. I can do this. I know I've got it all up here, and I know I've always been fit. Like I started weights training when I was 12, and that was actually because of my dad being in the army. I used to go to the military gyms, mate, and I was like, 11, 12 years of age, training with like, guys are like paratroopers and all of that. Yeah. And mate, what I loved is they didn't look at me any different. They didn't see a kid that walked with a limp, nothing like that. They were just like, so you want to be fit, you want to be strong. Let's do this.
Yeah.
So I probably had people that were I had people at a far higher standard than I was just because of their age. Push me.
Yeah.
And I think that was, for me, that was the catalyst for why I went down the path of racing. And it wasn't conventional. I started later than everyone else. I didn't have money. Yeah. Man, it was.
So you just have one sister, or
just the one sister?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And 2 little nephews. Hunter and Rusty, like classic kids. So they used to be really into. Because I've had a few years off racing now. I've had nearly 3 years off racing.
Yeah.
But when they were still around, like they'd come to the track and love it.
Yeah.
What little kid wouldn't, particularly when you're a little boy.
Yeah.
Like most little boys, like, man, I can still remember. I've got a picture on my wall of being at Eastern Creek in 1992.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
wow.
And like it shows, like it's so funny seeing it because Mick Doohan's bike at the time is straight across from the grandstand on the main straight.
That was the MotoGP race.
MotoGP.
Yeah,
I think it might have even been the first year.
Yeah,
it was at Eastern Creek.
Yeah, okay.
And I went there, and it's so funny looking back at that picture now and going, oh yeah, years later when I raced, my car was in his garage.
Yeah.
It's funny how you come a full circle at times. Because at the time you just thought, this is a dream. Just watching guys like that. Yeah. This is a dream. You don't really, I don't know about you growing up, man. Like when you've always been into cars and racing and all of that. But did you, like, was there ever that point where you're like, you dream about it and all that, but before you actually got those things that you were just like, this is the coolest thing to watch. And then suddenly you're there, like whether it be your first go-kart or your first Formula Ford, and you're like, Jesus.
Well, my parents, obviously my mum and my dad split at the age of 10.
Okay.
You're one of the first guests to actually ask me any questions about myself. But so I think for me growing up, I started late as well in go-karts because most kids start at 6, the ones that are racing now in Formula 1 and whatnot, car.
Yep.
But I started at the age of 10. My dad and my mum originally just couldn't afford, like you, to get into a car.
Big money, man.
Car or go-karts or anything like that. And, luckily my mum married my stepdad, Jeff, who obviously had a huge career in cars and is a massive car enthusiast. So that's how I got my kind of start. But I guess growing up, I didn't get diagnosed because, you talked about your disability.
Yeah,
so I have Asperger's, but for me, I was, it took me a while to click with certain things. So, with school, I was failing at school and stuff like that, man. And it was hard, you know what I mean? Like I kind of see the struggle where you're coming from with like the bike thing, but for me, it was more of a mental game type of thing. And
because you're almost trying to figure out yourself, aren't you?
Yeah. Yeah.
See, that's really interesting because one of the things, I was 4 years old when I said this to my mum. I go to her, Mum, I know I'm a really great athlete, right? She's like, okay. And she didn't say anything. And I just go, I've just got to figure out how to climb out of this body and fix everything. Like 4 years old.
Yeah.
And when I tell people that story, it's funny. You get different responses. You get people that go, "Anchor."
Yeah.
Like, who's this guy who walks with a limp to think he thought he was going to be a great athlete?
Yeah.
But I'll give you an example. So when I was little, so with my condition, man, so I'm hypermobile / extra flexible in certain joints.
Yep.
And then I'm tighter because of shortness of ligaments in other areas.
Yep.
So when my first bike was a little red BMX with plastic spokes. I could actually only ride it with my right leg because my left knee didn't bend enough.
Yeah, okay.
So this was in the UK when we lived there. I learnt to ride that bike, came off training wheels, pedaling that bike with my right leg, and I'd hold my left leg up to the side.
Yeah. Right? So you're only pedaling with the one
leg.
Yeah, okay.
Right? And I was the fastest kid up till about the age of 9, 10-ish.
Yeah.
And I was riding the bike with one leg.
Yep.
Just could destroy people. Like, I'm talking for raw speed, acceleration, everything. People are going, man, this guy should go in, you should get into cycling, like Olympics. And people would say that. And it was funny because I think, like at the time you're just going, oh yeah. But you don't think anything of it.
No.
It's not until years later you look back on what you told your mum, like, I know I'm a great athlete, this, and you're like, yeah. But it's funny, at the time you're going through those things, you're battling going, why am I like this? Why do I have to work so much harder to achieve a result?
Yeah.
Not necessarily the same result, sometimes the same result, but in other areas.
That was kind of like me at school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's an internal battle.
Yeah.
Right? It's an internal battle, and that's your big thing. And I think particularly in not so much these days. I think it's a lot better these days. But certainly back then, if you go back 20 and a bit years ago, there was this, but to be an athlete, you've got to either be tall and rich. Everything's got to be symmetrical. You can't have something that's deemed a disability.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, yeah, you might be really good, but you'll never be as good.
Yeah.
We're certainly discovering nowadays it's not the case. We've had guys like Oscar Pistorius who...
Piastri,
No. Pistorius in running. Oscar Piastri, he's a whole kettle of fish. But no, Oscar Pistorius, the Paralympian who then qualified for the 100 and 200 in the bloody able-bodied Olympics.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I've got a bit of a saying, Dan, and I don't know how much this relates to you, but, what is a disability?
Yeah.
What is it?
Yeah.
Usually it in most people's heads, it's something that stops you from doing something that other people can do. That's how most people view it.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, but hang on, I can run. It might look a little bit different like back then because, I had my hips.
Didn't you tell me like off air that you entered in, obviously, I think it was a school carnival and running, and then the teachers at the time were telling you that you couldn't run or something?
Oh,
like that?
Dude, this was funny. So I love the school, and I'll mention the school because that was some of my best years. It was Arden Anglican School at Beecroft, and I've still got mates that went to school back then. So I was like, and my dad, we call him the White Kenyan because he's a freak. He can run long distance, sprint, everything. So school carnival comes up in grade 1, and they're like, oh, you don't have to, but you've got to enter an event. And I'm like, yeah, that's fine. I'll enter the 50 and the 100. Because back then, like 50 and the 100 they were big events when you're tiny kids. I'm like, but it's all right, Ben. We'll give you a head start. I'm like, no, it's funny. That embarrassed me more. That embarrassed me more because I'm like, I don't want to have that pointed out. Like, starting gun goes off and and you jump
got a head
start.
You've got a disability.
Yeah. I was like, don't do that. No. Kind of condescending. We'll give you the head start. Yeah. Anyway, first year, like there was a bit of rain that day at the carnival, so the track was wet.
Yeah. Did you start crouch down, or did you start?
Yeah,
afterwards?
I think back then, I forget how we started as kids.
Yeah.
I think I did. I probably bent over, fingers on the ground, ready to launch. I knew how to run because I was always into sport. Like I was like probably one of the few 4 or 5 year old kids that was watching Olympics when most 4 or 5 year old kids like, no, I'll be fine. I'm playing Lego on Tupelo. I've always been a sports fanatic and always admired athletic feats. So I was like, yep, done. Okay, get ready to run. And it was so weird, man, because the gunshot went off. I took off and they gave me, you're going to laugh, 2-second head start.
Yeah.
And I think they thought, wow. Well, I ended up coming third.
Yeah.
And it was wet. And I actually slipped at the last moment and slid under the finish line.
Under the thing.
I think I might have even been in second place and slipped and still came third.
Yeah.
And it was so weird because I was like, wow, there you go, man. And I walked off and I went to sit back down because we had houses, like, sports houses, like in certain schools. Yeah, that's it. And I was in Burnham, which was red. And I go to sit back down and this mum walks past and she scowls at me. She goes, you took a ribbon off my son that he should have gotten, except you got it because you got a head start. And I was really young and I'm like, oh, I didn't matter. I'm like, yeah, but you still got a ribbon.
Yeah.
Go, son. Like, didn't care. Grade 2 came about the following year. And they were like, yeah, so you're going to run again, but we're going to give you only like a 1-second head start.
Did you dispute that or you just went with the
I was like, man, you don't have to give me a head start. I actually said to my teacher at the time, she was a lovely sports teacher. And I said, I don't think I need the head start. Just let me run. Oh, but won't you be embarrassed? I said, no, I'm more embarrassed that you give me a head start. I said, I'm pretty quick. And I think they kind of chuckled, like, yes. Good old positive thinking Benny. Yeah. Pretty, and it's like, you can think what you like. Yeah. I'm pretty quick. Yeah. Like, I got a wire in my ankle. I'd had muscles removed from my right hip that needed to tidy up when I was born. I knew I was flipping quick. Yeah. Considering all of that too.
Yeah, bionic man.
Basically, yeah. Yeah, exactly. The $1 Million Man. Yeah. Except I had like $1. So, and that was in like a St. George Dragon thing. Yeah. So,
I was going to hit on the football, but you're right. Continue the story.
And then, so basically, they're like, so you don't want to head start? I'm like, no. So I came fourth. And we had kids in our year, like I can still remember these two guys, Andrew Williams and James Isaac. And they were like freaky runners.
Yeah.
And I was only 2 positions behind those 2 boys. And came fourth, no head start. So grade 3 comes around. You're like, oh, no, you don't think you should run the race this year, Ben. I'm like, but I came fourth last year with no head start. And I was pretty confident by this stage. I'm like, I'm stronger. I was starting to, get over some of the surgeries I'd had a few years earlier from a little kid. I'm like, no, I can do this. Nah, you can do the egg and spoon race.
Yep.
I'm like,
the egg and spoon race.
Egg and spoon race. And mate, after that, it kind of killed me for a bit. Like you're a little kid, and that made it highlighted it worse. Because
did you play soccer or rugby or anything like that?
Mate, I played soccer at school. I played cricket at school.
Were your coaches like cautious about you doing sport though?
No, that's what's hilarious.
Only the running.
Only the running,
yeah,
right?
Okay.
And I think that was because running's always been a blue ribboned sport. You know, if you look at the Olympics, right? So I think there was a bit of a status, and it's like, how can the kid with a limp rock up? This is embarrassing. And I thought, really? You're up against someone who, like I said to my mum, I know I'm a great athlete. You're up against someone who, in I reckon 20 years from now, when they look back, you know, this was then, they're going to go, holy crap.
This dude's race cars.
This dude's race cars now. Maybe we shouldn't be so hard on ourselves. Like, fourth is fourth. Like, I might not have won. But it was like I got beaten by the 3 fastest dudes in our school and 3 of the fastest dudes in our state at the time. Let's not beat ourselves up. But for me, I think I found it as I grew and I became more aware of what a so-called disability was. Sort of withdrew that confidence and self-belief. I started going, I'll go to the school carnival, but I won't participate in anything. Yet outside of school, I was playing soccer. I was playing cricket. I was mad into bikes. Mad. Like, I'd go down trails.
BMX biking.
Yeah. You know, it's funny because mum and dad, I knew they were scared a little bit. Because I remember they said one day, because every now and then I'd have surgical checkups, because I'd had most of my surgeries by the time I was 4. I had my last couple at 10. Right, and they were minor. They were cosmetic things. But the ones before 4 were huge orthopedic things. Like, they when I was born, they said to mum and dad, look, he's probably only got about 2 years to live because of the effects, muscles and all of that. They were like, you know, and the heart and lungs being a muscle. Like, so just preparing you for it. And they're going, but he looks so chunky and strong. And they're like, yeah, but, you know, anything that affects muscles, like it could weaken things. And they were like, right. So I got to like a year.
Was this school in the UK or America? Because you said you lived.
Oh, so the first Arden?
No, Arden was in Australia.
Arden was in Australia in Beecroft. Yeah.
So you went UK, America, back to Australia.
Yeah. So when I went to the UK, when I went to the UK, I only did kindy over there. And it was, mate, that was a great school. It was actually a big castle and all that. And it was.
I'm surprised you actually remember that. Like, most kids as a kid don't remember much at all.
I swear, I got one of those freaky memories. Like, you know, when you run into someone in the street.
Well, so you only had kindy, and then America was only 1 or 2 years again.
Came back to Australia for a few years, 5 years. Then went to America. Came back and then finished high school. Over.
So where was it in America? Was it like the
deep
south, or was it?
Yeah, it was deep south attitude. We were in a place called Missouri. So we were on an army base called Fort Leonard Wood. And that was where I was like, yeah, it was at that stage people were like, man, Ben's pretty sick on the bike. Like, he does pretty crazy stuff. And I wanted to get into motocross and supercross. And in America, that's huge. Oh, yeah. Like, that's up there with, man. Like, I was watching, like, the start of Jeremy McGrath's career. And all of that.
Remember we had that video game years ago? Oh, mate, that was the best game.
Mate, you couldn't get me off that game. It was like, Ben, you need to stop playing. You know, you've got schoolwork to do. It's like, yep, playing. I love it. No, so I honestly thought I was going to go down that path, man. Because also over there, like, getting into motocross, supercross, it's not that expensive compared to cars. Not that expensive. Like, I could still get like a secondhand CR80 or YZ80 and be competitive.
Did you get a motorbike or anything over? Or you stick to your
not over there. So, mum and dad did me a deal. They were like, right, in summer holidays, if you mow lawns and save up money, for every $1 you save, we'll match it. So I saved up. So I bought my helmet. I bought my Scott goggles. I bought like a Fox jersey. And it was back like when everything was fluoro. I've still got it. And it's the maddest thing. Like, anyway, I bought all that. And then they're like, okay, how much money have you got left? I'm like, $250. You're like, that's all right. So you've got $500 to buy a bike when we get back to Sydney. I'm like,
hell yeah.
Yeah, here we go. We find at the time it's Trading Post, right? So I'm going through and I'm looking at like the cost of things. I'm like, $500 got you something okay. But mate, I didn't know what okayish was. I'm just going, I've got a motorbike. Like, I can get a motorbike. And people at the time, it was interesting. People were like, you know, you sure you want to go down the motorbike path or do you want to go down go-karts? But go-karts were still a lot more money.
Yeah.
To get a go-kart that was going to be semi-competitive versus a motorbike that might be competitive, it was like triple the money.
Yep.
So got a dirt bike. It was a Honda XR80 from like the mid-'80s. Twin shock. It was diabolical.
Yeah.
Like you'd come off jumps and it would actually bounce back.
Yeah.
So it was actually like riding a pissed off Bronco horse because you'd land on the jump and then boom, it'd bounce you off.
Yeah.
And I came off the handlebars one day. I was riding at this place called Pacific Park, which is Maroota, northwestern Sydney. Yeah. And I landed on the back of my head, like between where the helmet and your neck is. And I couldn't feel my legs for like 20, 30 seconds.
Wow.
I couldn't move them. Couldn't move them.
Yeah.
And Mum and Dad were parked about 100 meters away. And it's so funny because growing up, everyone was like, why would you want to go into racing or something fast? You've had all this surgery to fix you. Why would you want to go down that path? I'm like, I didn't have all that surgery to fix me to live a life full of limits.
Yeah.
I had that surgery so I could push beyond those limits.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And when I had this accident, I was just, it's funny. I wasn't scared about not being able to like feel my legs. I thought, man, you've already overcome hurdles. You know what I was worried about? I was worried that my mum and dad would go, we told you this was dangerous and might stop me doing it. Because I in that 30 seconds, there was a part of me that's like, right, you can't move your legs right now. Okay, you're going to have to figure out how to ride a bike, you know, without being able to use your legs. And then suddenly, boom, like the nerve. Yeah. But then like, that was like that was what I thought. I didn't think, oh shit, my life's over. Because I'd already gone through hurdles. Yeah. Right. And I kicked them out the park. You know, I exceeded the doctor's 2-year life limit. And then when I got to, you know, like when I was at a year age and they're like, hang on, he's getting stronger. And I'd been in a cast. You're going to laugh. So when I was born, I had the hip surgery. They put me in a cast, right? That was from my waist all the way down with this like plaster of Paris like broomstick to keep my legs like open to fix my hips in the right position.
How was this when you were a kid?
Yeah, this was when I was like 2 months old. And I was in that cast till I was like just over a year old. And I was getting stronger and stronger despite being in this cast. And they're like, okay, well, look, he might survive, but he's not going to walk.
Oh, so they rode you off as a child?
Oh, yeah.
Essentially not.
Yeah, man. No, like, he's not going to walk. Yeah. Like, the chance he's going to walk unaided, let alone at all, not going to happen. Like, you know, the doctors, a lot of doctors, like, it's in the textbook, that's verbatim. There's no, but what if this dude's a freak? Yeah. That's what I was. So they took the cast off at like 14 months of age, and 3 months later I was walking. Like I skipped basically the normal crawling phase because I was in the cast. I was just pulling myself around. Mum had come like from one room to the next and I'd done a pull-up and I was up in the kitchen cupboards. So I'd developed like loads of upper body strength. Now it was time like cast it off. Now I've got to build this stuff up. Yeah. And so
your body just had to mentally, you thought as a kid, I've just got to skip that stage and start trying to walk.
Yeah. I think that's a great thing about when you're a kid is you don't think in like, it's got to be this way or the highway. Like you don't think like that. You just go, oh, I've got to get from A to B. How do I do it? Yeah. Done.
I tend to do that a lot.
But it's the best way. Yeah. That's why I love Peter Pan. Don't grow up. Yeah. You know, like I'm not saying don't be responsible, but don't grow up. Don't start going, oh, I've hit the 30, age 30 now. It's time to act old. I've hit 40 now. It's time to get an ailment. Yeah. I hit 50 now, penis stops working, like something, you know what I mean? Like, you don't bloody just will yourself to be old. You will yourself to be as young and as functional and as vital as you can be. You don't, and I think that's what you've got to do, whether you're born with something like myself or whether you're overcoming something like your Asperger's. You don't, once you get over the internal battle and you go, right, do you want to stay alive or do you want to pull the plug? You want to stay alive, right? You want to live your best life, yeah. How are you going to do it? Figure it out. It's not going to be the same path for everyone.
No.
Not. But it's kind of cool when you discover that you've gone down this different path and had to, overcome certain things that most people wouldn't. And most people go, like I said, you don't fit the traditional mold as what an athlete or a race driver is. And you just prove it can be done. I think that's the coolest thing. I don't look at it now as, wow, that was a burden.
Yeah.
I mean, sure, if someone said, yeah, but would you have liked to have done it easier? Yeah, I'm not going to lie. Like, there would have been times where it would have been, where I probably had to work at like 65% and someone else work at like 30% to achieve the same result. I think, oh, well.
Yeah.
The thing that made me, though, Dan, was I always had to work on my fitness.
Yeah.
I had to work on that from an early age to make up for the deficit. But it's also what keeps me going now. Like if I encounter an injury now or something like that, I'm like, okay, you've been here before.
Did you excel in any like school subjects?
Science. Love science. Yeah. And I was
going to say PE. Did you excel in PE as well?
Yeah, I did actually. Like in the only things, there was only one aspect of PE I wasn't brilliant at, and it was part of the gymnastics. So certain parts of the gymnastics, like the tumble roll and all that, no issues. But like we had like a full pommel horse. Being a private school, like a full Olympic pommel horse where you're like, running down the sprint ramp and then jumping off a springboard and over. I'd do the springboard bit, but because my hips didn't articulate to like stick my legs out the side, I had to jump this bloody pommel horse by just tucking my legs up.
Yeah.
Scary as hell, man. Because I had to actually jump higher to clear it, whereas the other kids didn't have to jump as high. They just pulled their legs out to the side.
Yeah.
So I'm jumping up and nearly like hitting like a beam that's down on the roof.
Did you hate the beep test? I used to hate that back in the day. Actually, I got a thrill from it. Actually.
You would have been really good at it because you're like kind of like got a good like build.
I was telling you about like how I'd calculate numbers. That's how I used to beat the beep test. That was
like the Rain Man of the beep test.
Pretty much like the Rain Man in a way. I used to with you. So you were talking about your thing. So for me, for the beep test, I finished second. But what I would do is I'd calculate how many people I'd have to eliminate, and my brain would be like the beeps coming up in 2.3 seconds, and
you turned it into like a game of Survivor.
Yeah, pretty much.
See, there's a whole sitcom in that. Like, that's so cool, man. Yeah, see, that's what I mean. Like, I love seeing athletes, and you class yourself as an athlete. Like, people don't understand. I don't think people understand the rigors of motorsport. Like,
you said there was an eclectic amount of people. Before I brought you on, you were actually suggesting guests to me, and you were just a general fan of my podcast, and I thought, why not bring you on? And,
Oh, dude.
So you were saying there's such an eclectic people
there is
in the motorsport community.
There is, isn't there? Like, there's the ones that want to race because they just go, I'd just like to give it a go. Then you get the ones that race because they're like a bit statusy. They've got the money. Not always necessarily ability, but they got the money.
Yeah,
but
they can buy a car.
Exactly. Yeah, that helps. And then you got the ones that are like, I just love racing. Yeah. I've always wanted to do this, and it doesn't matter whether they're super talented or at the lower end. They just love it. They've got that passion. They're my favorites. Like, to be honest, they're my favorite sort of people because there's something about passion when it comes to doing anything, right? But yeah, it's. I feel like we keep going off on tangents. You look back 5 seconds and you're like, hang on a second. We're suddenly talking about athleticism and now we're
they're the eclectic people on it.
Yeah. And it's cool, man, because I've met some of the most amazing people through racing.
Yeah.
I've met people who have genuinely been nothing but encouraging.
Yeah.
And then you meet some real assholes.
Yeah.
Like people where you just like, you look back now and you're like, far out. Like, I can still remember this guy coming up to me. I just got like our improved production touring car, made a bit hopped up. Yeah. And he was a front running guy at the time. Like, but he was sort of like one of the old school boys.
What was his name? Do you remember?
Yeah, I do. His name was
Jordan Cox?
No.
Coxie.
Nah, not mate. Coxie. Toxie in that car was so far in front of everyone.
In the Honda?
Yeah, in that little Civic at the time. Like, he could come off, right? He could come off and still somehow, like, come back and podium.
Literally, his viral videos, that's how he got into TCR.
Dude, that Bathurst pass across the mountain, like...
social media star turned
crazy. Like, and he's good. Like, he is good. Like, won't take that away from him at all. But another guy that was sort of an older bloke, he'd been around Iper for a long time. He raced a Honda as well.
Yeah, improved production.
Yeah. And he was like, oh, now, if I come up behind you, you know, don't... Because I just told him how there was this other driver who just kept blocking me. Wasn't in any way competitive against me, but he just blocked me. But he let other people pass.
Yeah, right.
And I'm like, an asshole. Like, just get out of my way. Like, we're not in the same league here. Like, let me pass. And he literally just swerved. It's like Max Verstappen. Mate, I'll just keep swerving. And it was like, unless you wanted to total your car. And this guy had hit my car once before and wrote it off.
Yeah, right.
On debut, like when I debuted this particular Honda, he wrote the car off. Right? So I've got no, like, mate, he knows who he is. So I was like, far out. And this other bloke, I'm telling him the story, he goes, oh, yeah, well, if I come up behind you, you better make sure that you let me pass. And you know, when you're just like, oh, right, you're devaluing me as a racer because you've always been that top dog. Like, it didn't even occur to me.
Did he get the shits because the way you looked in the pits beating him or something like that? Was it something in his head, mate?
It's interesting. I don't know, Dan, because unless I've always seen myself differently. I've never looked in the mirror.
You see yourself as a normal person.
Yeah, I've never looked in the mirror and gone, you are hideous.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, I've looked in the mirror and gone, man, you're fit. Like, you're not a bad looking dude. Yeah. Like, if I can say that. I was like,
say whatever you want.
Thanks, man. Yeah, cool. We can airbrush this. No, don't. I am a good looking dude. So I was like, I don't see myself that way, but maybe I'm delusional. Like, I actually did start thinking to myself, man, maybe I am, like, I've got delusions of grandeur or something. Like, I genuinely was concerned. Like, when this guy said what he said, and I'm like, like, if you're going to pass me, like, I will always race clean. Yeah. Always. If your load's faster for some reason, whether it be your car or I just don't have the car dialed in, I'll let you around. Like, I'm not going to hold you up. I'm not that sort of racer, right? Yeah. We're not racing for sheep stations at this level of racing. Yeah. So when he said it, I thought, you know what? I'm going to go out there and good luck catching me. Like, the first two races, I stayed ahead of this bloke until the engine mounts broke on the car. And he came up behind me. And I heard when they broke, scared the hell out of me. And I was like, oh, right. So what did I do? I pulled off the racing line, let him pass. And he comes up to me after the race and he goes, oh, yeah, thanks for doing the right thing. I said, yo, you know, the engine bloody mounts broke, Bob. So, of course I was going to let you pass. And the look on his face, like, he just thought I'd lost to the mental game, right? He thought, yeah, I got in his head, and it's like, no, I was pulling over because the engine was literally starting to shift in the bay. And when he said that, when I said that to him, you could just see the look on his face, like, oh, that's why I caught Ben's car. And it's like, yeah, absolutely. Like, I will still, to this very day, if someone said, so do you think you were good at what you did in, you know, with the equipment you had? Absolutely. You know, I don't buy into, like, you know, someone said to me once, how much better do you think you'd be in a race car if you weren't born with the Arthrogryposis? I said, I don't think I'd be any better because I've had to, like, get to a world elite level of fitness. Like I said, like I was.
How did you find go-karting? Because obviously we're talking about cars.
Go-karting? Yeah.
So what was it? Did you buy, what was a racer or something?
No, so I never had the money to actually have a go-kart.
Okay.
I've driven some clubmans. I'd had a crack in a bloke's racer when I marshalled out at Eastern Creek, like the actual.
Oh, so you were marshalling in the club days?
Yeah, man.
I was racing.
I would have probably seen you. I knew like at the time, Justin Rougier and his brother and his dad.
I'm still trying to get Justin on the show. He's pretty busy at the moment.
They were such nice dudes. And he used to race Reeser. It's funny.
Yeah, in BRM, in a BRM car.
Those things, those Reeser motors,
he was a gun in go-karts.
Oh, yeah. And he was pretty decent in those little Aussie race cars as well.
Yeah.
Like he's just, which they basically are a go-kart with a roof, aren't they? Yeah.
So what was it? You never could afford a go-kart. Did you just do the come and try days type of thing, really?
That sort of stuff. That's exactly what I did. And people were like, oh, you know, Ben's got a lot of potential. My big thing was because of the ankle movement, I had to use my toes a lot more. So part of my condition, as I said, I'm hypermobile.
On the accelerator or the brake?
On the accelerator.
Okay.
Right, left ankle, no issues. And I'm still double jointed on the toes, so no issues. But the right, so what they did, they were like, oh yeah, that's easy. They just put this like little extra metal like bolt-in screw that enabled me to not have to have the same level of flexion in my right ankle, and I could still get full throttle. Yeah. So yeah, the come and try days, did a lot of them, and then because I was marshalling, dude, I learned so much about kart setup, so much. Man, I was there when
it's Eastern Creek, is it?
Yeah. So not on the high track, the actual proper racetrack, right?
Track, yep.
So I was there when like Mark, like we'd have like state titles, national titles.
Yeah,
it was like bloody Mark Winterbottom. Yeah, man. Yeah, unbelievable. Yeah, mate, one of my,
karting was crazy back then. That's when I got into it.
And can I be honest, that was my favourite time of karting.
Do you remember Neil McFadden? Remember that name? Yeah, mate, he was a gun, the number 59 Top Kart.
Well, I used to always see swinging. Yeah, well, you talk about Top Kart. Yeah. Troy Hunt was one of the coaches for Top Kart after he'd just come back from Europe. So he used to work, I think, out for the Top Gun.
That was his team. So it was Kart 1. Tim Craig owns it. I'm trying to eventually get these boys on.
Yeah.
It was Kart 1 owned it, Tim Craig.
Yep.
And then he had a flurry of drivers underneath him. Like he had big names like McFadden, Hunt, and there was a bunch of boys. Antunes was another one, but Antunes was tutored by my cousin Simon Hogg was also on it. He was in the team as well in the car. That back then,
man, you're saying all these names now.
That was like the HRT of North Shore Kart.
This is where racing's such a brutal sport. All those names you said, what a handful became like pretty sort of household names.
Yeah.
And there were guys in there that were, and I say this with all due respect, better than even a lot of the guys that ended up going on.
Yeah.
But they just didn't have
the coin. Yeah.
And that was, for us, that was the big thing. Money. But at the same time, every opportunity I've had in racing to date, oh man, I've been so grateful for.
Did you look when you were like flag marshalling for the go-kart back then, did you idolize any go-karters? Like, was it Winterbottom? Do you remember? Do you remember like looking at the track on the flag, and when a guy would pass the checkered flag, you're like, I want to be like him one day?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, man. Justin Rougier, particularly. He was, mate. I remember physically seeing his conditioning when he came to the track because he's not a tall bloke. Justin, he's a little nugget. Yeah, and he was shredded. Yeah, and he was the nicest dude. And his younger brother, Daniel, I think his name is. Yeah. I think it's Daniel. They were the nicest dude. Big into rotaries. Which I've now got. I've got a RX-7 race car that I'm getting ready for tarmac rallying. But Justin was probably, in my opinion, in New South Wales, he was the guy. I knew about Winterbottom. I knew about those boys.
But so I looked up to Christian Lindbaum, and he actually driver coached me briefly.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's funny here.
And Hunt, Troy Hunt.
Where are all these guys now?
Yeah, well,
like I know what Justin is, but like
Troy's running his own go-kart team. Christian's now a card dealer. He did race supercars briefly.
Yeah.
It's crazy. You think about all this talent. Just it's so crazy you actually bring that up. A lot of them haven't gone on to be big superstars because of the cash thing, I guess.
Exactly. Well, there was a brilliant Formula Ford racer in the day, and it was when Formula Ford was like the supports for the V8s.
Yeah, this were the Kent cars or the Duratec? Was it 2005, 6 or before? Before. Okay, so it was the Kent cars.
He was coming up when Mark Webber was. Right? Yeah, okay. So we would have been kids, right? Yeah. But like
Mal Rose is pretty good, by the way. One of my guests.
Mal Rose. I bought my first improved reduction racing car off Mal Rose.
Really?
Yeah, it was an old Mitsubishi Mirage Cup car, Rally Up Mirage Cup car.
Yeah.
And like Ian Lafford actually pointed me in that direction because they're mates.
Yeah, yeah.
And he was like, yeah, it's a real race car.
Yeah.
I like that RX-7.
Yeah.
RX-7's like mega. Yes, right. I jumped into this Mirage and it was like Friday practice at Eastern Creek.
Yeah.
And I jumped like first practice out with the Ipra cars and they combined like the over 2 litres and the unders.
2 litres, yeah.
And we were like, what just happened? It was like taking a knife to a gunfight. It was a nice looking car.
Yeah.
But it was quick like, 18 years earlier. This was back in like 2015. I was wide open down the main straight. Mum's like, coming to the pit. She's like, is that a pit crew? Mum and Dad.
Yep.
And she's like, you know, you can go faster if you want down the main straight. And I'm like, I'd love to. I'm flat. I was holding it flat into turn 1. By the end of the weekend, those tyres were down to the steel belts.
Yeah.
Because I was
just
holding
your
it
mum
flat.
and your dad helping out with your car
Yeah,
racing?
yeah. And
never had any pit crew on your hand?
No, pit crew. Paul McKinnon at the time from Evo Motorsport, Evolution Motorsport, was doing like all
also
the fab
creates
work.
his own go-karts
Yeah.
too.
Oh, yeah, those MCK karts he makes. How nice.
I know.
How nice,
I wanted
man.
to buy one when I was working for the Straight
those
Post.
those things just look like, it's like that. I hope those things really take off. To me, they're like, you know, like those car manufacturers that just like Coenseg and stuff like that.
It kind of is the Coenseg of go-kart.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very small and built in the Northern Beaches too.
Dude, so cool.
Yeah.
So, and he's a mad fabricator.
I've actually tried to get him on the podcast. He just doesn't want to come on.
Serious?
Yeah, he's just a quiet guy. Just
right.
Do his own thing and build cars.
He'd have a cool story. He won like the karting world championships and beat like Jos Verstappen, Jan Magnussen, you know, all those boys that like now have sons in F1.
Yeah.
And he smoked them.
Yeah,
like
he told me a story. Of course, he doesn't want to come on, but hopefully Paul listens to this.
Yeah, yeah.
Where he sent me a photo of him at Wakefield testing an F3 car. Anyway, long story short, he, as you said, he blitzed the drivers trying to get the seat in the F3 car.
Yeah,
and then again, as you said before, the budget thing just stopped him.
Didn't have it.
Yeah.
Well, he took a few years off. I remember him saying like, yeah, and this it's such a complicated industry to navigate, don't you reckon? Like, like when to make a move, what step to take next. And he said, like, he took a few years off and he just thought, you know, someone had come hunting after him.
Yeah.
Didn't hear anything. And then he was like, oh, okay. But it better start, you know. And so he just focused on, like, all his fab work. And that was how we met, Paul, because he prepped the Mirage and he kept saying to us, oh, no, Benny, it'll be a pretty quick little car. Like, I think you'll be surprised.
So what was your first race car, the Mirage, was it?
First race car in a cams category? Yeah.
The Mirage.
Yeah. The RX-7 was really...
a Mirage Cup car, was it?
It was a Mirage Rally Up prepped Cup car.
And that was from Melrose, was it?
Yep, that was from Melrose. So I drove to his property. And
interlocking stories here.
Yeah, man. Oh, mate. Like, this industry, you know someone through someone who knows, you know, it's like, it's funny. It's quite incestuous, really. But it's so cool because I got the car. First of all, I went down to Marulan and tested it on the small circuit. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, I don't know. Like, maybe the car's just not dialed in. It felt like it had no torque and all that because it didn't. Yeah. And then we were like, okay, let's go to Eastern Creek. Maybe it just needs a bigger circuit to open its legs. Yeah. Oh, mate, that was, if it had bigger legs, the bigger circuit would have been handy. It was already flat out halfway down the main straight.
Yeah. You didn't need any modifications to your car at all, did you? Or did you? Or did you need to?
No. See, that's the other thing. I think
because you were talking about that with school, you know.
Yeah, right. Like people think that they've got to cater something.
Yeah, got to handicap you.
Yeah, right. No. So that's the other thing, right? So, like I said, other than being, it's a funny condition because I don't really class it as an outright disability in a lot of ways. Yeah. Because to me, a disability means you can't do something, right? Which is kind of amusing. In which case, we're all somehow disabled, aren't we? And I said this to someone because she goes, you're going to laugh. She was a psychologist person. I wasn't going to her. She just sat down. We got to know where we were living. Comes up and she goes, well, clearly you're disabled. And I'm like, really?
Thanks. Is that the first thing she said to you?
Yeah, I'm like, yeah, right. That clearly? I'm like, really? Oh, okay, cool. Yeah. And then I'm like, well, define the disability. And she struggled. And I'm thinking, okay, For someone who's a professional in a field like psychology, I'm like, funny that you couldn't even answer that. But then I was like, okay. So she was like, oh, well, disability means when you can't do something. I said, okay. So I said, you're disabled. She goes,
to you? She said,
no, I said back to her, well, you're disabled.
Yeah. Because you couldn't answer the question.
Well, that too. Didn't even think of that. And I go, can you run as fast as Usain Bolt?
Yeah.
Just no.
Yeah.
I go, so you're disabled. She goes, how so? And I said, you've just said it. You can't do something that someone else can do.
Yeah.
And she's like, huh? Yep. And I'm like, well, I can still run. I said, but I can't run as fast as Usain Bolt. But I said, I'm sure as hell I could still run faster than you. And she's like, reckon? And I go, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I know I can. And I actually said to her, I said, look, I hope, because I'd gotten to know this lady over a few years at the shops. She'd always come up and all of that, her and her husband. And I said, look, you've got to really understand, don't ever judge something on because something, like I walk with a limp because of ankle surgery and hip surgery, and my left knee doesn't bend quite as much as my right knee. Yeah. So obviously it's going to make my gait slightly different to someone who doesn't have those things. I'm like, but don't judge my physical capabilities or athletic capabilities based on, Ben looks different doing something that's traditionally, looks like this. Don't do that. Because it's going to, not because, I'm not a very PC person, man. So it doesn't offend me that they're like if someone, like if a little kid, I get little kids coming up to me, it's so cute. And they'll go, oh, you've hurt your leg. What's wrong? Yeah, it's like, no, it's all good. And the mums are like really embarrassed. And I'm like, no. I said, it's okay. And I show them my scar and all that. I'm like, all good. But when you get an adult, you find out it's like a psychologist.
That's right. You're a huge dog person, aren't you?
Yeah. And they say something like that, and you go, like, class disability for me. Because it's funny. There'd be people that would class, well, I don't know. You can tell me what. Do people class Asperger's as a disability?
I've struggled ever since I was a kid. I've struggled to hold on to a full-time job. Or just a general job.
Yeah.
Because they just think I'm not mentally capable to, last 8 hours.
Really?
Yeah. So I've always been capped at doing 4 hours, surprisingly, just because of the whole government system.
Are you serious?
Yeah. So I've always tried to make myself work like with the podcast, essentially as a job.
Yeah.
Or like Trackstar as the company.
That I love before. That, dude.
Yeah. I had that company as well. So I always used to start, small things to just keep an income. You know what I mean? Because I'd get paid half from a government job, and then I'd have to make the other half because I was never allowed to work 8 hours, so to speak.
And
you know what I mean?
That's frustrating because someone else has made that judgment on your behalf. If you'd said to them, no, I'm cool, I can do that.
Yeah.
Would they have let you? Or would they have still gone, look, Dan, very glad that you think, because I caught this a few times, man, like where it was like, I went to do a few labouring jobs because I've always been really strong, really fit. They were like, man, it's really good that you think you can do that and that you want to do that, but we're not going to do it. I'm like, mate, if you're worried about me getting injured, you don't have to worry.
Yeah,
like,
don't hire me then.
Mate, yeah. Like, dude, I've stacked bikes, I've crashed race cars. Like, dude, like, I'm not going to break. Like, try me.
Yeah.
And very rarely do you get people do it. And it's a shame, man, because I think there's so many people out there, not just in the field that we've come from in racing and sports.
Yeah.
I think there's so many people out there who want to show off how capable they are, and people are scared.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't help that we live in a world that's full of bloody litigation and I'll sue you because this happened and all of that. Yeah. But it's funny. I think if you spoke to most people who are classed as having, whether it be, they're neurodiverse or physically different, they'd be like,
the way they look.
Yeah, like, don't worry about it. If I'm not worried.
The only people I'm kind of scared of is crack addicts because they just approach me randomly.
Bro, they're hard to read, let's be honest. It's like, hang on, He's staring.
That's what happens when you record.
Yeah. It's like he's staring
but
at me.
Not disability, but no.
But it's like he's staring at me. It's like, does he like me or does he want to shank me?
Yeah.
And it's like, and then you get close, like, no, he wants to shank me. Yeah. It's like, dude,
I've made a few of those statuses on Facebook. I don't know what attracts me to them. It just happens.
You know what it is? Do you know what I actually think? Also, I think when you've gone through life and you've encountered hurdles, you know what? You actually, it's not just empathy is the wrong word. I think you might scratch the surface and actually discover someone who's really kind of cool and interesting under that.
Yeah.
Right. And I think they see that energy because I think when you're that blottoed out on whatever they're on, their body's functioning on instinct. And probably, to be honest, the only thing that they can read is energy.
Yeah.
So they start going, well, this guy's energy seems pretty cool. Like, dude, I've diffused some things where I look back now and I'm like, how on earth did I get out of that?
I just walk away.
Do you? Yeah. See, I love it occasionally having like chats with people like that.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a bit, wow, that was hairy. Yeah. Right. But yeah, I do believe that there is a prejudgment if you don't fit a mold, and racing's very much an image game, particularly if you're trying to make it at a high level. Like, tell me this, how many like morbidly obese people do you see at the top of the game in racing, particularly in like European, standards of racing, or even top tier Aussie racing? No. Yeah. And let's be honest, now more than ever, most of them are like, they're almost like they're very clean cut, whether they're the guys or the girls, very clean cut. Their social media gets tidied up. Everything's like this. It's polished, right? Yeah. But you know what it's lacking? It's lacking character. It's lacking diversity in characters. It's lacking diversity in cars. Like, to me, an example of this, a prime example is like the old days of like Bathurst and touring cars, where you had heaps of different cars. You had guys like you had guys like Braden Wilmington's dad, Gary. Gary. Like, rock up as a privateer and stick it to bloody like budget.
Melrose, privateer racing,
exactly. Melrose, same thing. Like, talent trumps budget. Like, and it was so cool. And I think we can, to me, that's what people should look at. They should be looking at talent, not perceived capability or perceived what can they bring us in terms of dollars. But it's not like that anymore. So, when you add in something like my arthrogryposis, where there's a bit of a visual difference, or, with you, as you said, with Asperger's, you'll think of things differently. To me, like, I don't see those things as disability. Like, you're completely high functioning in every area, physically and mentally. Yeah. Like, if I'm not worried, why are you worried? If I tell you, okay, I don't think I can do this, okay, cool. We'll look at it then. But if I'm not telling you that, don't worry about it, mate. Yeah. Like, I think that's the part that gets difficult. Like, I used to get angry and bitter over certain things like this. And then I realized everyone is, as an emotionally intelligent, because they either haven't had those life experiences. So, to them, the hardest thing that they've ever encountered is, oh, my bank card failed. And then my nose started running. And FML. Right? How many times do you see statuses like that on Facebook? Oh, I missed my bus. And then found out my boyfriend's actually not a boy. Like FML. And you're like, really? That's the worst thing in your life? So yeah, man.
So what was your path route through cars? Because we've gone way off on a few tangents here.
Absolutely,
so, like,
man.
if we go up the ladder from where you started to where you finished, how did it start?
Okay, so started in pre-production racing.
Yep.
Back in 2015.
Okay.
In the Mirage Cup car.
Not only a few years ago. That's essentially only 7 years ago.
Yeah, only that long ago. It was quick and to the point, and then went from there.
It was with a yellow.
Went to DC2 Type R Integra.
Yep.
That was a big step up. Cool car. Yep. K-swap motor. Still in the under 2 litre class. Yeah. It's a good car because in the Mirage, I came second in the first year in the under 1600cc championship, and in my second season, I won the under 1600cc championship in the
Mal's old car.
In Mal's old car. Mal's like, see, mate, it's still competitive. I'm like, yeah, I'm still getting, still getting the Honda.
Yeah.
Because we were actually going to turn the Mirage into a weapon. Actually, Paul McKinnon was going to do it.
Really? He was going to soup it up?
We were going to actually put an Evo motor in it minus the turbo.
Yeah.
So it was going to be like this Godzilla sort of like NA building the Mirage. But he got busy because he's a bit of a one-man show, Paul.
Yeah.
So he got busy and then this Integra came up and we're like, right, we'll step it up. So ran that for the 2016, 2017 and mid through the 2018 season.
Yep.
Before the engine catastrophic down the main straight in 2018.
Did the engine get rebuilt by you, or did you just sell it as it was?
No, man. We sold it after that. Like, we'd blown our budget.
Yeah, right. So you just sold it as it was, and they had to fix it.
Yeah. There's still gearbox was there. They just had to build another engine.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Like that was devastating. That was one of those like, oh man, like that was an FML moment.
Yeah.
Because it was like we're going down the main straight. We're in 5th gear, not even like missing a gear change. Boom. Yeah. And it just let go. I had to actually pull the car up using the handbrake so it didn't hit the wall at the end of the main straight because all the oil when the motor blew up inside just went all over the brakes.
Wow.
Yeah. So
holy shit. So you ran that car to the ground essentially. You drove real hard with it. Pretty much.
Mate, that motor only lasted 1 hour.
Yep.
It was a brand spanking new motor. We had the latest Motec, all of that. Yeah, that's a whole different story, man. That's like I said to you before, where I said this industry's got some great people and not so nice people.
Yeah,
that was a not nice people moment and a not nice experience moment. But you know, look, we've gone through it. Yeah, we survived.
Yeah.
So yeah,
and then you wanted to dig in Formula Ford, which is how we got to know each other.
Yeah, man. Well, that's funny. I'm glad you said that because 2016 I started testing with Anglo Motorsport, who you're racing with.
Yep.
Right. And I was going to move to the UK in 2017 and race in the British Formula Ford Championship.
Yeah.
And I was like, right, like this is the path that other people who want to make a career, like Daniel Ricciardo a lot of people don't realise he didn't do much Formula Ford racing in Australia.
Raced in the State Series, State Series in WA.
Yeah, and I think he did one Victorian meet, and I think his best ever position was like 8th.
That's similar to Scott McLaughlin, actually.
Yeah, right.
Scott McLaughlin did very similar.
So I was like, instead of like pissing our money up against the wall in Australia and not getting noticed and seen, I had a lot of self-belief, and I knew like with the right people around me, I'm like, we can do this. Didn't know how much it was going to cost, and that's where it generally brings a lot of people undone, but that's all right. So met you, tested with you on multiple occasions, which was, as I said to you before.
You said that I was good on, outside you said that I was good on cold tires or something.
Mate, you were scary on cold tires. I remember when I first, because as I said to you, I'd never come from an open wheeler background, and I can still, for anyone who's never raced with Dan, like, or most people like, on their opening lap, whether it be a track day, practice, test, whatever, or a race day, your opening lap is about, getting your tyres a bit up to temp before you launch it off the start. Yeah. So I just thought, okay, I don't have the same open wheel experience with these guys, but they've come from like a historic rally car background and all of that. I'm going to follow him on the opening lap, stay with him while we're warming the tyres up, and then when he starts going for it, I'll drop the hammer behind you. Mate, you drop a massive set, pulling out of the Wakefield like pit lane, going onto the main straight. I'm like, okay, shit, I better like drop the clutch and like spin up, go out the back, and I'm like there for a second, and then boom, you just take off like the race has begun. Like there was no tyre warm up. No, he doesn't warm up tyres.
I don't warm up tyres.
It's like. It's like you just go.
My secrets, man. Like there's a race meeting going to happen. I'm kidding.
Mate, tell you what, dude. Mate, that's a secret that like even now I know. It's like, yeah, but you kept the car on the track because Wakefield's a funny track. Like it's got very reactive bitumen and all that. Mate, you were just like literally 3/4 of the way around the track.
Yeah.
I'm like, and I had like at the time Noel, Simon Hodges, and another bloke, and I think even Noel said to me, Dan doesn't warm up his tyres. No. I'm like, nah. Because I thought, I'm going to follow Dan. He's got a lot of experience in these cars. I'm going to follow Dan. I'm going to see what he does. Because I've always been good at mimicking, man, like in a car. Like, because I've always had.
At the time, you were trying to mimic me.
Yeah, I just thought, I'll just, once the tyres are switched on, boom.
Yeah.
Mate, I went to mimic on cold tyres.
Yeah.
I'm like, I was not going down. It's just sliding around. I'm like, and I'm just seeing you drive as if like your car was already warm.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know what I'm going to have to do now? I'm going to have to wait till he comes back around. I'll let him pass and then I'll follow you.
Yeah.
So that's what I did. That's all I ended up having to do because I'm like, and you did it every session. I tried every session. I was like, okay, I'll just hustle the car a little bit more in cold tyres and just see. Yeah. I'll just see what. Worst case scenario, I loop it and put it in the kiddie litter.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh. It's just like, it was like you defied physics on cold tyres.
Yeah.
Mate, if a race was a sighting lap,
yeah,
mate, I actually think you would have won
national
championships in any category. There's guys who are like, what the fuck is this guy doing? Just defies physics, you know? Like, it's not until other guys actually suddenly get their iron, get their tyres in that they're like, okay, now I can do it. Mate, you were just gone. It was the cool, I've got to be honest, it's still one of the coolest things I've seen.
What, me driving on my own cold tyres?
On a sighting lap.
Yeah. Yeah,
I still think that was one of the coolest things. And when you told me, like, you know, I remember, like, when you told me, oh, yeah, I've got this, like, it's form of autism. I'm like, yeah, right, man, this is, there's no curse to that. That's a pure gift then.
Yeah.
Like, I was just like, that's so cool, man. I still think I've never seen someone go out that hard. But you know what? You made me improve so much. Like, when I went, because when I went, I was going to move to England, as I said.
Yep.
And 3 weeks before I was going to fly out, because I was going to race for Oldfield Motorsport. I'd spoken to him like the night before, and I said, look, is your dad still able to get me a day-to-day car to run around in? We found a room. I was going to rent a room in this place. It was this lady's like castle estate.
Yeah.
And it was a mansion. I was like, we'd already put like the bond down and everything. 3 weeks before I fly out, I call up this guy and I'm like, hey, just making sure we're still good. Call me back. Didn't hear from him for a day, and I thought, runs a race team, runs a car dealership.
Pretty busy.
Pretty busy, right? Mate, so I thought, okay, 3 days went, call back. This number's been disconnected. I'm like, okay. And I'm like, well, you've got his email. Maybe there's been a technical issue. And, mate, the emails were back and forth right up to the point where only a week before that, I'm like, look, Mum and Dad are happy to pay the £30,000 up front before, because they'd given me what all the consumable items were going to cost, everything. Yep. You want the £30,000 up front? No, man, all good.
Yeah.
Like, everything was good. So we got 2 weeks out and we're like, we've heard nothing. And I'm leaving messages saying, look, guys, if this isn't going to happen, just let me know. I said, that way we can at least cancel the plane ticket and get some money back, which we ended up having to do.
So you didn't even get to race in England or do anything?
Didn't get to at the last moment. So we ended up having to get the Honda ready again for that season, because we were actually planning on selling the Honda. Mum and Dad were going to sell the Honda while I was over there.
Is it sold now?
Yeah. Okay. We sold it back in 2019.
Well, you did mention that before.
Yeah. So sold it back then.
But yeah, so you had the Honda, as a backup.
The Honda as the backup. So came back. It was disappointing because you know when you've done all the prep work. Like I dropped, because I've always been into weights training, so I had to drop 7 kilos to fit comfortably in the Formula Ford. And I did that here while still testing with Anglo and with yourself. So I'd done all the physical prep work. Mentally, I was prepped. I was doing like winter swims, like swimming in the middle of winter to get ready for the UK cold. Right?
You're on the full open wheel fitness.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was ready.
You are a PT though, aren't you? That's what you do.
Yeah, I'd done that. Yeah. Did that. And every now and then still PT people who ask, do I teach reformer Pilates and all
do you
of that.
You're a contractor with all that now? Like you do it as your own business?
Yeah, just do it like if people want to. I'm going to go back into radio.
Yeah,
actually. Okay. Yeah, man. Like,
have I convinced you to get back into radio?
Oh, dude, you actually have.
Okay.
So anyway, I used to write commercials as a creative writer. Yeah. I used to live over in WA.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And actually, they've got a really mad speedway scene in WA.
Yeah,
Big into sprint cars. Dude, you'd love it. the Kwinana Speedway, and all. I live like down the road from it.
Yeah.
And some mate, they got some gun. Like the Cricky Boys.
Is it Western Springs? Is that what's called?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. And there's like
the Cricky Boy shootout.
Yeah, that's it.
Oh, I love Springs.
Mate, well, I lived in Bunbury first before moving up to Perth, and so I moved up to Perth. I was still working in radio, and I was doing stand-up comedy as well.
Yeah, right.
Mate, I've had an eclectic career, mate. Yeah. Like I was watching your podcast, like when you were on Luke's podcast.
Yeah.
And you were telling about like your nightclub promoter days and all that. I'm like, Dan and I are brothers from another mother.
Yeah.
I'm like, we have done a lot of weird, diverse stuff.
A lot of weird shit.
Yeah, and got paid for it. Like that's the cool part. Like, I love it. So yeah, like,
how'd you get into stand-up comedy? Did that just randomly happen, or how did it? Yeah.
So when I was working at the radio station, I've always loved making people smile and laugh. I think it's, to be honest, I think if you can make someone laugh and smile, whether you know them or not, that's the greatest service you can give anyone, right? Yeah. It's cool. And I know when people make me smile and laugh, like when I watch you on the podcast, man, you just made my day. And that was like only 3 days ago. I'm like, and I already knew you, but it was like watching you like in this whole different light. I'm like, this is the best. So I was at the station, and one of my co-workers, Lisa, goes, so Ben, you're a funny guy. I'm like, thanks, Lisa. She goes, I've entered you in the Western Australian Raw Comedy Festival. 2007. I'm like, what? He goes, well, you told me you did that stand-up gig before you moved here at Cabramatta Leagues Club in Sydney. Yeah. Which is a true story. Yeah. That was a scary, scary thing.
You got to tell me about that.
Oh, yeah, I will. Don't worry about that. And she goes, and I go, yeah. And she goes, and you're only funnier from what I can see. I'm like, oh, thanks. She goes, so when you get back from Christmas holidays back in Sydney, you're going to be in this competition. Oh, wow. And the reality of it didn't strike. But anyway, I entered this competition, got knocked out in the semi-finals. That was cool. And this
is in
comedy,
WA,
this is in WA, and this promoter comes up to me and goes, oh, mate, that was a great set, mate. Mate, you know what? I reckon you need to do some jokes about, like, you know, having one leg shorter than another, mate. And I'm like, oh, not really, man. I'm like, I don't want to be that guy. I'm like, what, was I funny or not? He's like, mate, you're hilarious, mate. Brilliant. And I'm like, and that's all that matters. And from that point,
why are all the managers British? Have you always noticed that?
Dude, they are. And full like Cockney geezer British.
They have like a factory of managers, and they just pop out somewhere.
I think comms and sales and promotions, I think that might be like a genetic thing. I've known so many, right? So from that point, this guy, his name was John McAllister, and I'm forever grateful because he started booking me for gigs. But I was having to drive from like Bunbury 2-3 nights a week, 250 Ks up to Perth, do a gig that didn't start till 8:30, 9 o'clock at night, didn't finish till after midnight, and then drive, you know, nearly 3 hours back to Bunbury. So I was like, you better get a job up in Perth and move up there. And then I was actually doing stand-up comedy 4 nights a week, basically 3 nights on a quiet week. But
paid gig and everything.
Paid gigs, not paid straight away. Probably took me 6 months. And then I started like getting like support spots and then MC spots after that. And I was gig, and I love it, and I still love it. But I got out of it because, again, like it's like in motor racing, you get some people they just get so serious and over analytical. You'd come off stage after a gig, and they'd be like, "Oh, I should have said this word like this." And, you know, if you wanted a bigger laugh, you should have said that. And it's like, and it started killing the joy. The joy of just making people laugh. Yeah. And they were turning it into something that was like, man, just be funny. Yeah. Funny is funny. Yeah. You know, you can joke about anything, and that's what I love. You can laugh about anything. Yeah. Right? So I did the stand-up, and it was cool. And it's funny because when you were talking about your nightclub scene, we did a lot of gigs at like some weird venues, And imagine going into a nightclub with basically like a rave going on in the background.
Yeah. Is this in Cabramatta or in Perth?
No, this is in Perth.
Yeah, okay.
And like a full dance floor, and then you've got this little section that is not separated by a wall, and you're trying to do a gig, and they're all like off their chops, dancing to like electro and house and all of that, and no one can hear you.
Yeah.
And you're like, cool.
Yeah.
I mean, you still got paid. Like, you just did some really bizarre sort of venues.
Yeah.
I performed at a bowling club.
Like
and
a
they didn't.
bowls club.
Yeah. Like,
old
the
people.
Fremantle Bowling Club.
Yeah.
And they literally just had like the family dinner, and then they were like, okay, guys, special treat tonight. We've got comedians.
Yeah.
And we go to them, oh, so you have a stage? And you're like, no, but we've got this like milk crate. Step up onto like a milk crate that's like wobbling as you're like, you know, you're literally like standing there concentrating more on your balance than you are your set.
Yeah.
But it was so cool, man. And that's, to me, I love performing in anything. I'm competitive at anything. And I love just taking myself outside that comfort zone.
Yeah.
And that's why I love stuff like this. Because you'll be asked questions, and you'll be asking questions that will take people outside of the comfort zone, where you'll learn something about yourself. They'll learn something about themselves. But there's no, and this is why I think podcasts are cool too. They are so freeform. Like, how many tangents have we gone off today? I don't know how Holly's going to edit it.
Yeah.
I reckon she's going to pop like an acid and go, you know what, this is the only way you can solve this.
Yeah.
You know, pop that, and then it will all make sense.
Yeah.
Right? That's what I do, and I'm not even into drugs.
Yeah.
But if it helps, you do what you need to do.
Yeah.
So, yeah, man, did the stand-up and then came back and then built the RX-7 race car, which I'm now getting ready for the White Line Tarmac Rally Series. Which
I was going to ask that if you're getting back into racing.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, mate, you can't stop me. Like, I love it. I love it. And you know, and I'm going to do maybe some other tarmac rallies as well. I'd like to go back to proper racing a Formula Ford again.
You want to have a crack at that again?
I do, because I love the parody of Formula Ford. I think, and you probably know, I don't know if it's complete parody, like, you know, in say Kent's and Duratex. I don't know how close the parody is.
I'm actually racing a kid called Will Lowing at the moment.
Okay.
And he is just an unbelievable talent, right? Races for Paul Liston. Have you had a List Tech race car?
Yeah, I love that guy. Yeah.
So he's Mark Lowing's son.
Okay.
Anyway, long story short, he's just an amazing driver. And like you, he wants to go to the UK.
Yeah.
He's actually
do it.
He does want to do it. But the thing is, again, it comes down to
Money.
budget. So he's trying to find money to race over there. And that's the thing in Formula Ford and in club level racing, is you know, you'll either get some guys who have a shitload of cash, or not.
Yep.
And Will wants to race in the UK to, you know, make his more racing.
Well, that's it. You need to get that exposure.
Yeah, get that exposure and stuff like
more
that.
Intense craft. They seem to.
Yeah.
You know,
what I was trying to say is, though, is, Ben, that as you said, there's the two different classes. He's in the Kent class, and he's technically same with me. I'm beating some of the Duratex too, but he's a step ahead of me.
Okay.
And beating more of the Duratex than I am, and he should be in the Duratex, but again, just doesn't have the budget. So
that's it.
For him for his end goal, he wants to race in the Formula Ford Festival.
Oh yeah.
So
man, I hope he gets there. I love hearing stories like that, and it's funny because, you know, you tell certain people that, and they're like, so you're happy for that person to, you know, get something or get where you didn't, and I'm like, yeah. You're the twisted bastard. Like, if you didn't want to see someone succeed, particularly when they're nice and they're good people. You know, I like seeing good people who get ahead. Yeah. Because you see a lot of people who are ruthless. Not that they're not necessarily talented, but they're ruthless and they get ahead, and you're like, yeah. So when you hear stories like that, you're just like, you're crossing your toes, you're crossing your fingers, and you hope people understand what it takes to get there.
Formula Ford for you, do you want to go to like the Kent level stuff or the Duratec again?
Can I be honest?
You never really got that shot, did you?
No. See,
all.
we were, when it looked like we're gonna, like when we lost the touring car motor, and we were gonna be like, you know what, let's make the single seater dream come back alive. Right? So we were gonna go down that path, and we were sort of being steered towards Kent, and you know, I was like, Dad was like, well, I think we should go Duratec, because if in a season's time you've got to pay all this money again to take that motor out and put this motor in and upgrade the brakes and upgrade to bigger tires and all of that, let's not like spend things twice, because that's what we learn. You know, you probably learn it in racing too. Sometimes you actually better spend that little bit more money up front if you can. Like if you're lucky enough to have that extra bit of budget and do it up front, then do it twice and spend all your budget and instantly, oh, now I have no money to race. I've got a car, but I can't afford to enter. So we were going to do that and just, you know, we had a legal battle with the race engine not let go, and that like we ended up losing like 30 grand.
Yeah,
so it kind of like put the racing on hiatus, which was a shame.
Yeah, so that's sunk you now for the last couple of years.
Yeah, last 3 years.
For like 3 years, so that's put you back.
Time.
Yeah, right, with the race team.
Big time.
Oh, wow.
So if I go back, so I'm going to start racing the RX-7. I'm going to just to like get back up to speed because it's such a powerful car. We had it in open class in World Time Attack like 6 years ago. Yeah, but we had a mechanical issue.
This car that you're racing.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's a beast of a car. But
did you enjoy the Ian Baker Time Attack
it's
podcast?
A great, mate, so good. That guy's amazing. Like, from where Time Attack originally started to where it is now, what an effort. So cool, man. Dude, you've had some just awesome, interesting characters on this show. Like, when you called me, I'm like, what have I got to share?
Yeah.
You know, and you're like, oh, dude, tell them about like what it was like. And I'm like,
see, I'm trying to rally the Formula Ford community to get Jeff Senior on my podcast because he's got some stories. But again, you know, I was actually going to ask you next. Yeah. Is there any, like, for me, I look up to guys like Jeff Senior and club veterans. Do you know what I mean? Like Stephen Lacey, who also
Stephen Lacey,
they're like club. They're like club legends in their class, but they're always around and you look up to them. Is there any guys when you got into that state racing scene who you look up to? You know what I mean? Like, I asked about the go-karting thing. Do you know what I mean?
Yep. So, oh man, good question. See, it's funny you mentioned Stephen Lacey because Sports Dance from memory. Yeah, I've seen his name around since I was a kid. Yeah, and I remember when I first saw Sports Dance thinking, these things are mental. Like, wow. Like, why would I race a V8 supercar when I could race this thing? Yeah, sports. Just nuts. Like, there are no rules. Stephen Lacey actually would be one of those guys. But it's funny, you know, at club level.
See, no one really looks up to people on club level. That's what I thought I'd ask you. You know what I mean?
Dude,
and it's about people on my podcast.
Yeah, it's a nice question because I actually think it's not through lack of talent that they're in club level. No. Like, how many guys have you seen over the years get to club level racing and it's just like, just as people say, oh, so you just race state series? Yeah, man. Do you know how much that costs?
Yeah.
Like a lot.
A lot of money.
There's some seriously talented dudes who have just gone, you know what? I know if I want to take this further, it's not just a little bit more of a leap. It's crazy. Yep. You need serious like money behind you, backing. Dude, it's funny. I knew you. Like, you're gonna laugh. I knew of you for years because of a mutual friend of ours, Connor McNally. Yeah, right. So in Formula Ford and in Ken, I probably would have said, yeah, I looked up to you. Yeah, cool. Yeah, like, all jokes aside, like, I was like, hence why I was like, going to stay on the back of Dan. Yeah. No, I'll just wait till both our tyres warm up. So, you, man. I mean, I knew about other names. Yeah. But club racing doesn't get the same TV coverage it used to get. No, that's what Blendline. So I appreciate Blendline TV. Yeah, you know, you got to watch it on YouTube. But see, do you remember back in the day and Melrose? I still remember. I knew about Melrose 20-odd years ago when they used to show like on what's the weekend show that had like Mark Osler, RPM. RPM. There we go. And they'd show like proper grassroots. Like it was like there was like that VN Commodore Cup series. Right. Mal talked about that Commodore Cup and stuff like, and they'd give it TV coverage. You'd see go-karts get TV coverage. You'd see improved production. Like Leanne Tander was improved production. Yeah. A lot of people didn't realise that. Well, a lot of people in IPRA now wouldn't realise that. She beat all the kids in the Duratec National Series. She's a gun. Yeah. Yeah, she's a gun. Do you know who I used to love? Actually, no. Do you know who I actually looked up to? And this might surprise you. And it's a name a lot of people, because I thought she was so cute. and I mean that in like the most complimentary way.
Yep.
Her name was Melinda Price.
Ah, yeah.
She raced.
I'm trying to get her in the podcast too.
Dude.
Yeah.
She was a gun in the 90s.
Yeah.
Like a real gun.
Yeah, I know.
She was up there like her, and I still remember.
She builds cars to this day, like XL. Yeah, she's building an XL car. Her daughters are racing. Yeah, she's full into it.
Daughters.
Yeah, daughters are racing too. Yeah.
Far out.
I know.
So I mean, I was a kid watching her going. I had a bit of a crush. Like it was like, Linda Price, and you get all like giggly, you know, mate. She was a really good. Because
did you watch the In the Pits documentary? Have you seen that? You haven't seen that? You got to watch that. On YouTube.
Good.
Yeah, go after this podcast. Go back and watch that.
I will, man.
Yeah.
I will. But yeah,
type that in on YouTube.
Yeah. But it's funny. Like, what do you do outside of racing? Like, do you do anything? Like, I race RC cars.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I do a bit of rock climbing and stuff like that.
Okay.
So now I'm obviously focusing on the podcast and whatnot. But
Yeah,
I like, you know, I don't know. I guess I play a bit of PlayStation. People have asked me about sim racing, for example.
Yeah.
I've never really found the thing of that. I've got asked that the other day in Facebook. What do you think of sim training?
Yeah.
For me, but I prefer like the
real thing.
paddock basher and go karts and the real thing, as you said.
You need the physics.
Yeah.
I think you need the physics. Like I bought the top line, you know, PlayStation steering wheel and all that, and I was like, it's not the same. See, for me, I'd rather do the RC cars because I'm at least, it's like I can crash the thing. There's consequences, right? When there's consequences, dude, it's so good. I started in RC cars when I was a kid.
Yeah, right.
And, you know, that was where, actually, that's probably really where in terms of competition racing, first started. It was 1/10 scale off-road buggies, you know, and then
I used to like slot cars. There was a big slot car track in the city years ago. I used to love
those big slot cars.
Big slot cars.
I've got one at home.
Oh, really?
It does like 120 k's an hour.
Yeah,
it's nuts.
I don't know where it is. It's down the road somewhere.
Yeah.
I used to love that slot car track.
That was an awesome track. I remember going there a few times. Yeah, see, I did that.
Yeah,
you know, because I think this is the thing. Like with race car drivers, there's always some connection to speed, even if they haven't been able to stay in the racing game anymore. They're always doing something that's like the speed related, like, oh yeah, I bought a jet ski and I've supercharged it. Of course you have.
Yeah.
You know, like, of course you have. Like I've bought a dinghy and I've stuck 150 horsepower outboard Mercury. Great. Yeah. You know, like there's always, this is what I mean about going back to that sort of conversation about eclectic people. I think the common denominator is we all like going fast somehow. We all like finding a competitive outlet. But at the same time, it's nice to step away from the rigors of racing because, as you said, financially very taxing, very taxing, and not everyone's nice in racing. You know, there's people out there that they'll be nice to you while they're getting your money, and then suddenly you find out years later, oh, this person said this and all that. So, you know, you need an outlet outside of racing. Like for me, it's my consistent thing has always been gym training and martial arts, so Brazilian jiu-jitsu, submission wrestling. So that's another thing. Like I think, you know, you brought me on here to talk about like, you know, what I was born with and, you know, did I need special modifications on the car or, you know, how did it hinder me or whatever. It really hasn't. Like, I mean, I've competed at 2 Pan Pacific Games in Brazilian jiu-jitsu.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
That was only 8-9 years ago.
I tried Muay Thai with my girlfriend.
So I remember seeing you post stuff. That's what I mean, dude. Like,
I struggled with that. I enjoyed it.
Don't worry.
Yeah, I have total respect for you doing jiu-jitsu, man. That is so hard.
Dude, you'd be good at jiu-jitsu. You've got
That's
good long arms, good long legs, good build. You know, and mate, it's great for your conditioning and it's great for your breathing. You learn, and I found it actually helped with my racing. Was doing that. But again, I think if we get back to the crux of why you brought me on here today, and you want to talk about like how did you find racing with, let's call it a disability for the sake of giving it a word. For me, I didn't find it an issue in terms of, for me personally, outright doing it. I think other people found it more confronting. Like, but I got beaten by the crip. I got beaten by the kid with, like, who's not like us. Like, yeah, but this is better than you. I was more determined than you. What I do behind the scenes, the hours of training and stretching, and I don't drink alcohol. I have dessert like 4 times, 5 times a year, like all those things. I do those things to make up for the areas that have put a handbrake on me, or to unlock those handbrakes. So I think inwardly, I don't think it's affected me. Outwardly, it's probably affected more other people. Like, oh, is this guy going to be a liability? Is he going to get hurt easier? Is his emotions going to be... It's funny, like, because obviously, mine's more overt in terms of I walk with a limp, so there's a visual thing that they can see. It's funny how people assume, like, oh, if there's a visual thing, if there's a physical thing, there must be a mental thing. Right? No, it's, if I can say anything to anyone out there who's questioning themselves because they've been told, oh, I don't know if it will be for you. And that's people's PC or polite way of saying, nah, you just won't have what it takes. Dude, don't listen. Don't listen. Right? I got a really, important saying for people, when they've said stuff to me. I'm like, your limitations are not mine. My limitations are a lot higher.
Yeah.
And they had to be. Because to get, as I said to you before, what only took them, say, 30% effort, took me 65, 70% effort. And that, people go, oh, yeah, to do the same thing. I'm like, oh, maybe the same thing. But when I realized I could push to 70%, when I should have only, needed 30%, when you get to putting yourself into an area of discomfort, one of my favorite sayings is, the more you embrace discomfort, the more everything becomes more comfortable.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So true. You don't have to listen because someone else tells you, oh, something. Don't second guess yourself based on what their perception of you might be. So for anyone who watches this and goes, well, Ben's had a really eclectic career. Don't look at it as, did Ben make it in racing? Yeah, I did. If you look at it as, but he didn't get to F1 or he didn't get paid to race, no. But I showed enough people out there who spent a hell of a lot of money on me just to do what we did. Like, we probably spent, in the short few years I was in, $250,000.
Yeah, right. Wow.
Yeah. With everything. Yeah. $250,000. So someone out there or a bunch of people out there went, despite what all your doubts might be of me, we'll still invest X amount of dollars into you.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's the critical thing. Don't ever be guided by the thoughts of others. Very easy to almost by osmosis absorb other people's angst for you. Or they say it's, oh, I'm worried for you. Are you worried for me? Or are you worried how you might appear because I achieve it and you yourself know you couldn't do it? You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
And I think they're more worried about, he's going to make me look like I'm not trying hard enough.
Yeah.
Maybe you're not. But I'm not telling you that. That's how you feel. So don't then go out of your way. Try and tell me or other people that you feel not be there, not to give it a go.
Yeah.
Because otherwise we're gonna miss having people like you around, me around, the Mick Doones of the world who could have had their career completely ended, but they just refab his brake and he becomes a 5-time world MotoGP, 500cc world champion. If everyone had, lost belief in Mick back then, we wouldn't have known who he is.
Yeah.
Okay, he's done it on a much higher level again. That's the point. He didn't listen to anyone that said it's over. Yeah. Alex Zanardi is another prime example. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just awesome.
Yeah.
Just awesome, man.
Yeah.
So, I think, to be honest, Dan, like, I feel really, really special and really grateful when you invited me. Like, initially I felt like an imposter because I was like, Joey Mawson on. We raced GP3. Like, you've had Al Rose. You've had, like, hang on. We've been on similar circuits. Like, I haven't been over in Europe, but like we've raced it this track and this track, and so have they. I'm like, why are you doubting yourself? What, just because they have more money or they went further, you know, because they had the opportunity, like more opportunity? Don't doubt yourself. Like, achievement's a real funny thing. If we start trying to compare achievements, we'll never believe we have self-worth. Yeah. Because an achievement's an achievement no matter what. You know, so when you were like, yeah, man, come on, I was like, this is cool. I was pumped. Like, even chatting to you last week, you know, in the car, I was like, mate, I'm so excited for this. Yeah. So, mate, thank you.
No worries, dude. No worries.
Thank you so much for having us. It's, you know, I feel like we could talk for bloody hours, but then like Holly's going to like,
before we go, I gotta know, you touched about an hour ago now, but your football team, do you go for the Dragons, do you? Or
I go, mate, Newcastle Knights.
Newcastle Knights.
Open the season good. Yeah. Open the season good, but at the moment, mate.
You're battling me for the spoon, the doggies.
Mate, I think we've got, you know, a box full of spoons are waiting for us at the moment. It's so, it sucks when you see it. Yeah. But, you know, it sucks. Like, but you know, that's actually a prime example. I actually think that's not a bad segue. There's a bunch of guys, right, at the top of their physical powers, and they can still get smashed by other people. So don't ever beat yourself up because you go, well, I've got something slightly different. Because, mate, if you can have like some of the best athletes, like physical specimens in the world, I know football's a different sport to racing and rock climbing and jiu-jitsu, but even so, mate, they can cop a hiding. If guys like that and girls like that can cop a hiding like that, we're not immune to it. So just give it everything you got. Yeah. You know? Yeah, no, big footy fan. Why? Who do you go for?
Canterbury Bulldogs.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah, that could be an interesting one. We'll be sharing cutlery, I think. Yeah. That's down the bottom. Yeah. Like, oh, here's a spoon. Oh, here's a spoon for you. Thanks a lot. Cheers. So,
well, thanks, so Benny, for coming on the podcast, mate, dude.
Thanks for having us, man.
I really appreciate it. Hopefully, I think you for sure. There'll be a few good quotes on this, and yeah, dude, I'm just really appreciated that you came on, and you know, hopefully encourage some drivers and future drivers to come race a car or a go-kart.
I hope so. Yeah, I hope so, man. Thanks a lot, Dan. It's what you're doing is so good. Like, honestly, man, like I'm not saying this as a mate to another mate. It's beautiful to watch, and I think you realise that everyone's got some sort of a story. Yeah, that needs to be told. So yeah, thanks for having us.
Thanks, Benny.
Cheers.